Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We just picked up my 53 Packard from my buddy's warehouse. Choice Sign Supply Wholesale Distribution. If you need any sign supplies, wrap materials, stuff like that, check him out. I will plug him in the description below. We are on the way back to my shop. Thankfully, John was nice enough to show up late and help us load the car onto his trailer since I don't have one anymore, because what do I need a trailer for when I got John? The 53 Packard. I will show you some more videos and pictures and stuff. I bought this car a little over a year ago and had planned on starting to work on it as soon as I bought it. That of course didn't happen because I'm way too busy doing everything else that I do. The plan is to get it running. It has a 327 cubic inch straight 8 flathead in it that were like the pinnacle of engineering back then. So I want to get it running. I want to keep that in it. I'm not going to LS swap it. I'm not putting a Coyote motor in it. I'm not putting a turbo on it.
But we are going to stance it.
We're going to put the stance on it. I want to 4-link it, bag it, and redo the interior and drive it. The body is all there. Someone restored it in the late 80s and decided to sling a bunch of Bondo into it, which is kind of crappy, but at least it's there. The floor needs a little bit of repair, but it's gonna be fun. I mean, we're gonna be able to put 6 heavy people in it and ride. So, which is good for John because he's gaining weight. It's probably gonna take me about a year to get it all together, running the way that it should be, but I'm excited. It's coming home. Trailer is very angry. When we pulled it up on there, the diamond plate on the floor started to buckle. The car probably weighs 5,200 pounds, I think is what I read. Oh, the engine and transmission in this car, I have read it's just over 1,000 pounds with no fluids in it. So it's cast iron block, cast iron heads, all iron rotating assembly. I'm sure the pistons in it were made from metal from the Titanic. It's old and it's heavy, but it's cool. The reason I ended up with a Packard, what are you beeping at, fool? My great-grandpa worked at the Packard factory in Detroit. That's why he moved to Michigan. He was originally from Virginia, moved up there with my grandpa, who was like 4 or 5 years old at the time. So I've always wanted a Packard. I've never really pursued one, and this happened to pop up on Facebook Marketplace one day. I went and looked at it, bought it from this really nice guy named Mark and his wife Lola. Great people. They buy old cars for a living. They go do barn finds and pick up old stuff. So I went and looked at it, told them what I'd offer them for it, and then told them the backstory, and they're like, oh, we could have charged you a lot more for this car since it's meaningful. I was like, well, that's not nice. Slow down this hill right here.
Uh-oh. Oh, God.
I told you.
Oh, God.
Anyways, I'm gonna sign off for now. We're gonna get back to the house and we'll look at the car a little bit. It is now Sunday. Got the Packard in the garage, up on jack stands, just so it's a little easier for me to work on in case I need to roll under it or take the wheels off. The brakes don't work right now, so that might be in the near future. So let's go over the car a little bit. The plan with this car after I bought it was to get it running and get the mechanics figured out, you know, brakes, steering, fuel system, all that stuff. Get it running just so I can drive it. But the overall plan is to bag this car. I've always wanted to bag something, you know, an S10 or a full-size Chevy truck. Never had the opportunity, never really had the means to do it. This car, I think, is going to look great on the ground. Long story short, I saw the car on Facebook Marketplace. I wasn't looking for one, it just happened to pop up. My great-grandfather moved from Virginia to Detroit to work at Packard in the 30s, I think, and he retired in 54. This car is a 53. As far as I know, he worked on the production line at Packard in Detroit, so he could have helped build this car, and I think that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, of course, my great-grandfather's passed away, and so has my grandfather, but my grandfather would always tell me about how his dad worked at Packard and how proud he was to be working at an American car company and doing big cars like this. So I want to bag it. I think it's cool. I actually started looking for bagged Packards on the internet after I bought this one, and I ran across one that's green on green, green interior, bagged on some Detroit steel wheels. So I tried to get a hold of the guy, and I actually got a hold of him on Instagram, and his name is Ross Brown. And just through talking back and forth, you know, I was asking him questions about his Packard, and he's got a Clipper. This is a Cavalier. Got to talking, and I told him I'm originally from Farmington Hills, Michigan. He goes, oh, that's where I grew up. And I asked, well, where'd you go to high school? And he says, oh, I went to Farmington High School. I was like, well, so did I. So through talking, I actually found out that we went to school together, and he graduated about 2 years before I did. I never really talked to him in school. I actually didn't know that we went to the same high school. But in high school, he drove a bagged Dodge Dakota. I'm sorry, it was on hydraulics. And I remembered that truck, and I said, well, I drove a third-gen Camaro. It was orange with silver racing stripes, you know, built motor, real loud. He goes, I remember the car. So Ross and I had never really met each other, but we remembered each other's cars, and we went to high school together. So as far as I know, it's the only other bagged Packard in the country. This will be number 2, and it's the same color. It's going to be on the same wheels, and you know, the owners of the cars are, you know, from the same area. Both grew up right near Detroit. So I think it's pretty cool. Let's go over the car a little bit. There were a couple trim levels in 53. Clipper, Cavalier, they had a convertible. Most of the cars were pretty decked out. Some of them had power steering. This car does not. This car is a 3-speed automatic transmission. And I forget what they call it, but it's old school, really old school. Back when automatic transmissions were first coming to be. So I bought this car off of a gentleman named Mark in Durham, North Carolina, and what he does is he builds furniture out of old cars. He bought this car and didn't want to cut it up and turn it into furniture because he thought it was in too good a shape. So walking around the car, the outside of the car, most of it's all there. There's rust popping, you know, in a few places. The biggest issue with this car is someone restored it in the past, so it has a lot of Bondo in it. And Bondo back in the day didn't hold up like it does nowadays. So it's starting to pop through. You can see here, there's Bondo under the paint here. This piece of trim is missing. I'm going to be looking for that. But on the outside, the worst part is here in the fender. And I've done body work before. That really shouldn't be that big of a deal for me to fix. So I'm just going to cut it, weld in a new piece of metal, and probably just prime it. I probably won't do any body work until I decide to go over the whole car, which is going to be a huge project. In case you guys didn't know, ask the man who owns one. That was Packard's slogan back in the 50s. Ask the man who owns one. So outside of the car, not in terrible shape. I'm going to let it ride the way it is for now. Inside the car, this is where I started running into, oh my gosh. So this is the rocker panel on the driver's side of the car. You can see the floor and the rocker panel in pretty rough shape. All the doors are pretty solid, inside and out. Someone has repaired this floor before. You can see where it's been seamed in, and there's rivets here where someone has put a panel here. The trans tunnel looks good. The pillars and everything looks good. The dash is all here. I doubt any of the gauges work, but I'm gonna mess with them and see what I can get going. This car did not have air conditioning. It just had heat, radio, and I've not yet been able to get into the glove box, but I want to. Hopefully there's some sort of paperwork in there that will tell me a little bit about the car. This is equivalent to a VIN tag in an old car. So you can see this is vehicle number 2672, trim code 82, which was Cavalier, and the paint scheme was KO, which was the green on green. Pretty cool. There's a matching tag in the engine bay too that correlates with those numbers. At one time there were some stickers here. I actually don't know what goes here. I need to do a little bit of research. And then the gentleman that owned it before Mark had it running and drove it, and he had done some wiring for the ignition switch. I don't know why he did all this, but under the hood you can see there's been some wiring replaced. So that's what I'm going to dig into first, is the wiring on this car. Floor in the back of the car, same situation. Got some rust, but it's there. I mean, enough of it's here that I can copy what's been done. The rocker panel over here is starting to go away too. You know, the sill plates are junk, but they make repops of those. All the glass is still here, which is awesome, because I can't imagine what a piece of glass like this would cost to either repop, or if I could find an original if I needed one, but it's all here. The package tray in the back is good. The trunk. I actually had to break into the trunk because I don't have keys for this car. But you can see the bottom of the trunk lid is solid. This light bulb right here, this was actually an option in 53 for Packards to have a trunk light. So the trunk floor is all here. It's surface rust mainly. I think it's going to be okay. Where the spare tire used to sit, the well had water in it, actually, when I bought it. And I might just cut that out and make a new trunk floor, because I plan on putting the compressors back here, the air tanks, the valves, all that kind of stuff. But the wheel tubs are in good shape, which is great. Those are a real pain to replace in any car. And this is the issue that I have with the car right now. The original wiring, it's all fiber wound wire, and it's in bad shape. You can see the sheathing missing and bare wire. So this whole harness is coming out of the car. What's nice though is I can get like a painless harness, just a universal harness, and I can make it fit this car, because there are no options. I have to have headlights, taillights, brake lights, turn signals, some interior lights, but the ignition is like 3 wires. I have to have a power for the radio and power for the compressor and stuff like that. But it's not like a new car where you have 10,000 wires and a bunch of different wire colors. I've got one of the original door panels still in here so that I can use these as a template to make new ones. You can see these were green on green as well. So was the front bench seat and the rear bench seat. They were green on green. After I get into here, like I said, I'm really hoping there's something in here that tells me something about this car. I went through the entire trunk and it was just a bunch of junk. You know, there was nothing really that told me what's going on. Now, we'll give it a look under the hood. It's really heavy, so I gotta use 2 hands for this. All right, so here we go. This is the meat and potatoes, I guess. This is a 327 cubic inch straight 8 flathead Packard engine. This, as far as I know, is original, has not been rebuilt. Of course, I don't really know much about the car, just what I've been told through previous owners. No air conditioning on this car, just an alternator and a water pump up front for your accessory drive. The distributor on the side of the block. This is actually the oil filter canister. There's a cartridge filter in here, oil fill, and then this big monstrosity is the air filter assembly. And from what I've been told, those are really hard to come by, and the air filter assembly, no matter what shape it's in, is usually worth more than the car in this condition. So I'll definitely be holding on to this. It is not going anywhere. I might actually take it off and set it aside and put something else on this carburetor for now while I'm getting it all running. The fuel pump is down here. That'll have to be rebuilt. This is the lower radiator hose here, and it's actually got a trans cooler built into it, which I thought was really neat. I can spin the motor over by hand. I've pulled the dipstick. It has oil in it. So that stuff looks to be in pretty good shape. You know, I was talking about the wiring. There's very little under the hood. This car is a 6-volt positive ground. So what that means is the positive battery cable goes to the engine block and the frame, and you run your negative to all your accessories. It's the complete opposite of cars nowadays that are 12-volt negative ground. So this is a positive ground car, and I need to change that because any accessory that I want to put on this car is going to be 12 volt. I haven't decided yet if I want to get it running on 6 volts because it should be pretty simple. It is going to eventually change. You can see some of this fiber wiring that's going bad. You know, these run to the headlights here. This is a resistor, I think. I don't know a whole lot about old wiring. There's a couple oil lines down here. The distributor is disconnected. I don't know why. It's just a vacuum advance. You know, the plugs and wires are here. I'll be pulling those off shortly. But you can see these red wires here have been replaced by the previous owner 2 times ago, and it's for the starter. So I'm guessing he was having a problem with the ignition switch, a problem with the starter. So he went through and kind of redid some of that stuff. But these engines are supposed to be bulletproof. They used to use these when they would run at the salt flats, you know, the top speed events. The Packard flathead was a go-to engine, and it's because they have so many main caps in them. So this engine has 9 main caps in it, whereas the other ones had 5. So this is pretty stout, and I really hope that the engine's in as good a shape as I think it is, because I know how much it costs to rebuild one, and I do not want to do it. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions about the Packard, please let me know. I'm really excited to get working on it. I think it's going to be really cool. So hopefully I'll be able to get it running in a couple of weeks. You know, I got to change fluids. I have to put a fuel pump rebuild kit in it, carburetor rebuild kit, distributor rebuild. The fuel tank I'm sure is junk, so I'll just have to have a fuel cell sitting off to the side to get it running. But there are no valve covers to pull off to check valve train. So basically you drain the fluids, pull the plugs out of it, replace ignition components, and see what happens. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I look forward to your questions. I try to respond to them all. If I miss you, message me, call me mean. You know, you guys are what makes it possible for me to do stuff like this. So stay tuned as we get rolling on this project.